Hi, this is Jenny Matthews. I'm the owner of State of Mind Therapy, and I treat anxiety and OCD with children, teens, and adults. And in this video, I want to talk about ERP. ERP is an intervention that's used within the context of cognitive behavioral therapy, and it's a really important intervention, and frankly, one of the most effective interventions that I use with my clients. And not every therapist uses ERP or is trained in it. So you want to make sure that you find a therapist that is trained in using ERP. So I want to start with talking a little bit about why this is important, how it helps, and then tell you a little bit about where you can go to find some help. So if you think about it, if you have an anxiety disorder, OCD, ultimately what's happening is your brain is lying to you. It's giving you all kinds of messages about things to be afraid of. And what ends up happening is we get anxious and anxiety spikes. And when you are anxious, you likely are finding something to reduce that anxiety with either a compulsion or perhaps avoidance. And what happens when we do this is the anxiety goes away. It's really effective. However, this is only short term. Unfortunately, what happens is this makes anxiety bigger. And this is where then you become more reliant on using that strategy every time to overcome your anxiety or to get relief. And then, unfortunately, it reinforces the anxiety as well, because you start telling your brain, okay, this is something to be afraid of, right? And so I do need to do this every time. And that strategy worked last time, so I need to do it again. So as you can see, that builds up a really, really vicious cycle that's really hard to break. And this is where we see people really struggling in their relationships, at their work or school, because now these compulsions or this avoidance has really taken over big parts of their life. So we got to stop that cycle from happening. So basically, how we're going to help you then with ERP is helping you take back the power. So anxiety and OCD, not in charge anymore. You're not going to listen to that anymore. So I like to give an analogy of swimming when it comes to describing ERP. In Minnesota, which was where I live, what we've got going on right now at the end of May is really nice weather. The ice is off the lakes and people are getting ready for summer, and I don't think too many people are jumping into the lakes yet, but we're known for land of 10,000 lakes. So people are ready to swim, especially kids. And right now, the lakes are cold, super cold, but that does not stop kids from jumping in. And so what happens right now, when you jump into a pretty cold lake, it's gonna be really cold. You might screech, you might be like, oh, I gotta get out of here. However, if you stay in there, it starts to kind of feel warm or comfortable, and you can completely tolerate it. And you might not even want to get out. In fact, it might be colder if you get out of the lake rather than just staying in the water. So why am I describing this? Well, it's very similar to ERP, because ultimately what happens when you stay in the lake is you just get used to it. And that's exactly what ERP does, is we expose you to what you're afraid of, and your brain's gonna get used to it. And that's how we retrain your brain. Sounds simple, not that easy to do. So here's how we would set it up. You'd set it up in a hierarchy. And so you'd make a list of all the things that you fear or the things that you avoid on a scale of 0 to 10. So you'd list as many things as you can possible on that hierarchy, and you'd start with the lowest level feared situations. You do not want to start at the top, right? We want to start slow. We want you to feel successful, want you to go slow, especially if you're a parent working with your child. You do not want to have them start way up top, because they're never going to want to do it again. It's going to be very stressful, very overwhelming, bad idea. So start small. and work your way up. So you're going to expose yourself to the option, that's maybe at like a 3, where it's a little bit challenging, but not so overwhelming. So I'm going to give you an example. When I'm working with someone who has panic disorder, this is somebody who is very afraid of having a panic attack. And so those physical symptoms they experience are very overwhelming, very scary, and they might avoid going certain places because they don't know if they're going to have a panic attack there, and they don't know if they're going to be able to cope with it if that happens. So what I would do is, in my office, I would actually help them. We would recreate the physical sensations, like maybe a racing heart, difficulty breathing, sensations of like lightheadedness or nausea. We'd actually recreate those sensations in my office so that you can get used to just having those symptoms. And so we would do that in a variety of ways. And as that became more manageable, we might then move you to doing that in different situations, maybe places like the grocery store or at work or in social events, so that you can retrain your brain that what you're afraid of is not going to happen, or if it does, that you have the ability to cope with it, and it's not as bad as you were projecting it or predicting it to be. So that is how it works to set up ERP, or I should say like an exposure hierarchy is what we would call it. So this is really important to do without any kind of safety behaviors. I've talked about that in some previous videos. If you do anything to help decrease anxiety, like maybe it's clenching your fists, or it's using a benzodiazepine, or seeking reassurance. You want to do your exposure exercises without using those safety behaviors, or at least have a plan to be weaning from them, because again, then we're not truly getting at that root and helping you get the confidence and the skills to be able to manage the anxiety in those situations, because you're just crediting that safety behavior. Okay, I think that kind of covers it in a nutshell. If you need help with setting up an exposure hierarchy and want to do ERP, I'm going to give you some tips on how to find an ERP therapist. So I would go to the International OCD Foundation website, and they have a directory in there for therapists in your area who've been trained in ERP. If you do not have OCD, you can still go to this website and find the right therapist for you. Anybody who's trained in ERP for OCD can apply this for anxiety as well. So highly recommend using that website to find a therapist. And if you're in Minnesota and you're interested in working with me, you can go to my website, which is stateofmindtherapy.com, and you can set up a free consultation where we can talk about working together. Okay, I hope it was helpful to hear about this today, and I really hope that you take the next steps to making an appointment with somebody to work on your anxiety by using ERP. I find so much value. I get so much pride in working with clients using this, because this is the strategy that I find my clients make the most progress in, and so I am huge into using this with any client with anxiety, because I just think it is what helps progress the quickest anyway. So thank you for watching, and feel free to reach out with any questions or concerns. Thank you. Bye-bye.